All right. Well,
Hello,
we're good. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Tally Protocol DAO Talk series. This week, or last week, we were joined by Denison. This week, we're joined by Raf. Raf, for the people who don't know who you are, give them a quick intro, who you are, what you do for Tally.
For sure. My name's Raf. I am one of the co-founders of Tally, and I'm the CTO here. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what to build and how to build it and make sure that we're always making life better and easier for people doing governance, people building DAOs on chain.
Awesome. So yeah, last week we gave the big overview, the big announcement of the Tally protocol with Denison. And this week we're going to talk to Raf a little bit more specifically this week about UniStaker and then Staker and the benefits for DAO, the benefits that the Tally protocol will have for the DAO. So Raf, let's start with UniStaker. For those who maybe are uninitiated with it, what does it do and what is the benefit of UniStaker and how is Tally, then generalizing it with Staker?
Definitely. So UniStaker, as you may know, is a system built for the Uniswap DAO to both distribute funds from the Uniswap protocol to token holders and also ask the token holders to do a little bit of work, ask them to delegate their voting power in the DAO. And we think this is it solves many problems that many projects have across the space. So we are working very hard right now with Scopelift, the team that built UniStaker, to generalize UniStaker to something we're calling Staker. The Staker, we think, will help solve a bunch of issues that people often run into in a way that is very reusable, that many people can use. We think we plan to build something that can be reused by lots of different protocols and projects and customized in some ways and taken off the shelf in other ways. And our goal is to build something that kind of enters the pantheon of smart contracts that people fork and copy. If you think about people copy the token contract, they copy governor contract, they copy particular modules on token contracts to do staking and wrapping and governance. We think Staker is actually the same kind of thing. It's a low dependency contract that can be reused for a few different use cases, and we can build a pretty simple version that then we can integrate into Tally's UI and probably a bunch of other UIs and interfaces to solve a few different problems for a few different personas. So if you're not familiar with UniStaker, I think helpful to start there. There's some great docs and an existing implementation that you can read about. But the thing we're building, Staker, is just a general form of that. So UniStaker is a smart contract that is controlled by the Uniswap DAO, and Uniswap DAO streams funds into that staking contract, and then Uni token holders can stake their Uni token in the Staker contract and claim a proportionate share of the funds that are streaming into the Staker contract. By staking, they can claim them and pull out a proportional share of whatever is going in. So in the Uniswap case, the funds going in are going to come from protocol fees. As Uniswap turns on fees on the Uniswap protocol, those fees will go into the staking contract and then get streamed out to anyone who decides to stake their Uni governance token. And we talked to a lot of different projects, a lot of different protocols across the space, and they're all grappling with some version of the same challenges that Uniswap saw and looking at similar ways to address them. And that's why we're building a Staker contract that does a few different things. One, it lets the holders of some token stake that token in the contract and then claim a proportionate share of rewards. We're also letting rewards go in. So any ERC20 token, you'll be able to whitelist it and then stream it into that Staker contract controlled by some DAO or some protocol. And the funds going in could come from anywhere, right? It could be some protocol that earns fees. You could stream the fees into the Staker contract like Uniswap does. It could come from inflation, like some project wants to print more of their token, maybe they don't have fees yet, but they still need some way to align token holders. They can stream tokens into the staking contract. And you could even imagine third parties that for some reason it's useful for the third party to stream some token into the staking contracts of the holders of the first governance token could claim rewards from that second token. But the staker doesn't just send rewards. It also asks the holders of the governance token to do something. So Uniswap case, it's the simplest thing. They ask the holders to delegate to somebody, anybody, themselves, someone else, doesn't matter. But there's some amount of work that you want these stakers to do to secure the protocol. And UniStaker starts with the simplest thing you can ask them to do, which is just delegate. Please, one delegation. That's all I ask. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot more you can build on top of this this kind of system. You can take the you can implement whatever rules you want for whatever eligibility requirements you want for why someone, who's eligible to receive receive rewards from their stake. And when we ship Staker, we'll start with at least one default module of like some requirement that token holders would have to do to be eligible to claim a reward. But I imagine people experiment with other eligibility criteria, other kinds of work. Lots of protocols want lots of different kinds of work done for their protocol, and the staking system is a pretty common way to do that kind of work. We see this with L1s like Ethereum. They require validators to stake to secure the network, and we can see it going all the way down to projects at the middleware level, the infrastructure level, the application level. They all have different kinds of things they need token holders to do, and different kind of risks they ask the token holders to take in return for some rewards from the protocol. And that's what Staker can be the general form of. And there's obviously lots of specific modules and implementations and requirements that people will have for that, but we think it's a big part of that problem is the same across all of the different protocols and projects we work with in the space. So that's why we're starting with a general thing, and then
so you talk about like it becoming this like core building block. Kind of, you can think about like ERC20s, governor contract, etc. We want it, or Tally and the ecosystem wants it to become this like core building block. I think, could you like summarize everything? I know it's hard, but like, why should DAOs care about this? Like, why do you think it is going to become a building block in the DAO space, especially for like governance and delegation?
Definitely. So I think it unlocks two new things for the DAOs and protocols that might use it. They don't even have to be DAOs. One, it can align token holders with the protocol or with the DAO. And that's kind of an economic alignment, right? By coming up with some deal where, if you do this particular work, you'll get some kind of reward, or, if you do fulfill some eligibility criteria, you can get some kind of reward. That lets the holders of the token or the governance token have some, both ask the protocol can ask them to do something, and it aligns the success of the token with the success of the protocol, which is pretty important because we see a lot of governance tokens where they aren't, the token itself maybe is trading on the idea of being aligned with the protocol, but there's no actual thing that ties the success of the protocol to the success of the token, or a reason to hold the token. So we see people sell it. They say, what, this token's never going to do anything. I'm done. I sell it. And when you sell the token, someone buys it, and the buyer is often not aligned with the protocol or with the DAO, especially if it's some governance token with on-chain governance rights over the protocol. Very often, we've seen this a few times in the past year or two, very often the buyer is someone who is not aligned with the success of the protocol, but maybe they're just trying to raid the treasury. We've seen a few DAOs over the past 18, 24 months where they had a big treasury, they had a market cap that eventually fell below the size of the treasury, and then it became profitable for raiders to put together enough governance power to liquidate the DAO, especially the treasury. We saw this happen in Aragon, or a version of it happened in Aragon a slower version of happen in nouns, and then a few projects in the space today are starting to worry about it happening to them, right? We haven't seen it happen anywhere else, but we've seen discussions in ENS, for example, about, they're wondering, okay, who holds all this power? We don't know who they are. They might not be aligned with us, and then the ENS DAO has to figure out what to do about token holders who are maybe potentially interested in liquidating the treasury. But this kind of staking primitive aligns the token holders with the economic success of the protocol. Token holders wouldn't have to raid the treasury to or sell their token to someone who will raid the treasury to get economic alignment. They can just do work for the protocol instead and get alignment that way.
So for the implementation of this in the protocol, what does it look like for someone who's listening? And we in this series we talk very high level and about a lot of complex and a lot of moving parts. What does this look like in the implementation stage, and how are DAOs actually going to enable this? How can they enable it if they're listening to this and they're interested in it, or even another person someone who's just what does this look like? Is it on the Tally front end? Is it somewhere else? What does that look like?
I think at first it will be a little bit custom. There'll be a general staker contract, and maybe the off-the-shelf version works. Maybe there's a few specifics to figure out, what reward are you going to put into this staking contract for token holders, and what work are you asking the stakers to do to be eligible for that reward? And this is, I think, also important because you don't want to give something for nothing, and you want to make sure that the whatever system you set up is actually aligned with helping the protocol succeed, right? You want to do something like what Ethereum does, where it pays people to validate the network and slashes them if they don't, or maybe something like what Uniswap does, where you want to reward people whose governance tokens are actually active in governance, either directly or indirectly.
So we talk a little bit, this is kind of a common theme across all the episodes, but something we've been thinking about, and this is kind of for anyone listening, something that's kind of been 4 years of work that we've been building towards at Tally, whether intentionally or not, but it's kind of led to this.
Yeah.
And we internally talk a lot about fixing governance at the incentives layer. And I want to, each episode kind of want to get your take on what do you think are the biggest things that are broken on the incentive layers for governance, and why this is, something we're building now, and why you think it is so important.
Yeah, I think the really exciting thing about a staking system like this is it connects 3 different parties, and it aligns them all. So between you can imagine some protocol that's operating, doing something important for somebody, some smart contracts, like Uniswap's a great example, but there are many others, many very important protocols in crypto that govern lots of key infrastructure in the space, and the token holders of that governance token, and the delegates who actually do the work of making decisions about whether to upgrade the protocol, or what to do with the treasury, or what to do with the funds. All these parties are right now aligned in theory, but in practice there's not much actually linking them together. Token holders delegate to delegates, but they might not check in to see how the delegate is doing. It might not matter who they delegate to, and delegates don't necessarily share much upside in the success of either the protocol or in successfully being a good delegate on behalf of token holders. But the exciting thing about a staker system is you can tie all these things together. So you could say, if this protocol is successful and it is profitable, delivering some value like Uniswap is to users, then it can afford to turn on some sort of fee, and then we can use that fee to both reward token holders for doing some sort of work, validating or activating their tokens in governance, and you can also reward the delegates for delegation. So we haven't talked about this yet, but what we think an important module that many DAOs would want to use for staking is to split the reward for staking between the token holder and whoever they are delegating to. So certainly they could delegate to themselves if they want to capture the whole reward, But you'd probably also want to require some sort of activity, like build some checks into the smart contract that would only pay out the reward if either the third-party delegate or the self-delegate is active in governance. And that incentivizes token holders to either be active directly in governance or delegate to some delegate who they expect to be active. And this, I think, closes an important loop, a feedback loop between token holder and their delegate, because it's important that if you have a lot of governance token power to give it to someone who you trust to do a good job and to be active. But in practice, we've seen that not everyone treats it like important, and in a lot of ways it's rational, right? Maybe it doesn't actually matter who you delegate to. No skin off your back if you delegate to someone and then they lose interest and they're busy and they stop being an active delegate. Nothing happens to your token. But I think it's reasonable for the protocol to use Staker to require that token holders, if they want to get a reward, that they pick someone active to delegate to.
Yeah, something again, this is kind of like the announcement series as we're building this in real time, but something that we talk a lot about in the light paper, if you guys want to read a little bit deeper about it, is kind of like these downstream effects that you're talking about. Like here, we're in the implementation phase and the building phase, but there's a lot of things that like this will allow to happen down the line. And we'll talk deeper about that with Frisian and Ben from Scopelift in future episodes. But I want to talk a little bit about like what could possibly go wrong. What is like the worst, like well, not the worst, but what is like a bear case for something like Staker or the Tally protocol? Like, is it purely based on adoption? Are there technical things that could go wrong? Not to like scare people.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a lot
of
uncertainty in a new venture, and that's something we think about a lot. Like, how do we validate our hypothesis early, and how do we get more feedback from users and the market about whether this thing would work? I think the main concern I have today is actually whether or not there's enough yield in the system to make staking worth it. Like, there are some big successful DAOs that earn a lot of revenue, but then there's a lot that don't. Either they don't earn very much revenue, or they haven't turned on fees yet, or it's just not clear how much pricing power they have. Maybe they have a lot of activity, but it's not clear how sustainable that activity is. They're kind of still figuring out product market fit. They have some protocol with a lot of users, but haven't figured out the business model yet. And so in that case, they have to figure out where the rewards are going to come from for staking. So obviously you can print more tokens and give those out. We've seen a lot of that over all of crypto. And I expect that's a pretty useful way to start. That's a good way to bootstrap bootstrap some incentive, right? If you want to create some behavior, get some work from the network, then maybe inflation works. But you would also want to look for other sources of yield. So either from protocol revenue, like Uniswap protocol earns lots of revenue from all the swaps they do. When they turn on fees, that revenue will go to the DAO, and then they can convert all that revenue to ETH and pay that out to their to anyone staking in their staking system. And I think that is probably where you should start if you can. Like, if you've got some protocol that makes revenue, start with the revenue. But the projects that are earlier in their business case will have to figure out something else to do, either inflation or possibly other sources of yield. In DeFi, maybe that's a place where they can get some yield in these systems.
Okay, let's talk about these protocol DAOs that have revenue and are thinking, or that have fee switches. They're thinking about restaking and governance. It's pretty hot in like Twitter and on the forums. Obviously, UniStaker has built they are building their product and trying to get it passed through the DAO. Are you seeing validation from these large protocol DAOs? Like you said, we're building very openly, and we're welcoming as much feedback and partnership as possible as we build this in real time. Are you seeing a lot of validation? Are there still a lot of people convinced? Like, what are the streets saying when it comes to something like Staker?
Yeah, we've had a lot of great feedback. A lot of people very interested in it. I think these kinds of developing a new kind of thing, it always is easier for everyone to get comfortable with it when there's some examples. So I think the fact that it's very exciting that Uniswap is taking the lead here and doing it. They're actually building on lots of prior art, right? The UniStaker implementation is inspired by something Synthetics started doing years ago, and we've seen obviously lots of other staking systems and different versions of staking. ETH does it. Most at once do it. Lots of DeFi projects did it. Famously, a lot of Curve and Curve derivative projects did VE style staking. So there's of course lots of prior art around staking, but the kind of this version where I think the thing that's changed is there are lots of protocols that have revenue, and they have to figure out what should they do with the revenue, right? If they accrue it in their treasury, that's one strategy, but then you open yourself up to governance attacks or just politics, like lots of people fighting over a big pot of money. Right? It can really actually be a big negative, big political problem in a DAO. And I think then when we look at UniStaker and then the general form of staker, I think we see lots of interest in, and we're working with some early build partners to get a few examples out and really learn the ins and outs of exactly what the problem space looks like and what the solution should look like. And we're definitely excited to talk to more people who are interested in some version of this solution and work with them too.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're listening and you're interested, there'll be links in the show notes to reach out to us to get involved. Okay, let's wrap it up. In a year from now, maybe it is a longer time frame. I don't know, what exactly is the time frame for implementation in terms of full adoption? What is a perfect bull case look like for the implementation of Staker, not only for Tally, but just for the broader ecosystem?
I think it'll be live, definitely live before a year. And not just one example, but many examples. And probably different examples try slightly different things, experiment a little bit, learn the different trade-offs. But I think in addition to it just being out there, I think we would love to see some of I would be very excited to see some of the theoretical alignment things actually working, right? It's always a little bit hard to game out these, in theory, if such and such a stakeholder gets rewarded for such and such a behavior, it would be great, but people game metrics, people, if you're just requiring people to be active, they can just press the button to be active. There's a lot of edge cases to learn about when these theoretical ideas about incentives actually touch people and get deployed and people start using them. So I think the bull case that I'd like to see is a lot of the incentive alignment working really well. People will have to tweak the design around the edges, but I would be very excited if in a year we actually had some great examples of it working, as intended on the incentives.
Awesome. Super exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
Yeah, we're excited to roll this out. And as always, check out the show notes for everything we talked about, light paper, how to reach out, and many other links as always. We'll have future episodes coming out. Check out the one from Dennison last week if you haven't, on the overarching theme and reasoning behind the protocol and why we're launching it. And we'll see you next week for another episode. Thanks, Daph.
Thank you.